Hey, Michigan HOSA. My name is Anya Shah, and I am your Director of Membership for this school year. With us today, we have Anshul, who is a Harvard med student. So, Anshul, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on this webinar. Super cool. I'm from Troy, Michigan, which is in Southeast Michigan. I'm sure everyone knows that area. I went to the International Academy East Campus, which was there, and actually in high school for a couple of years, I did HOSA also. I had done pathophysiology initially, and then medical math after that. And I had a definitely a fun time with medical math is what I'll say. In high school, I had a general interest in math, and I would say more so I was like going into college with a lot of interest in math, but I always loved my sciences too. Was generally into chemistry going through high school. And so when I came into college, um, I feel like I didn't come into it with a specific lens on like I am going into like pre-health, pre-med. I just generally was like, you know what? I'm just going to take like the general pre-health, pre-rec classes. I'm interested in science. I'm going to explore my science majors. And I threw in a few math classes in there to see if I want to do a math major too. And like my first couple semesters, like I was completely slammed by the math classes there. So I ended up focusing a lot and turned out I really loved organic chemistry. And after playing around, bouncing around to like many different majors, like I think the end of my sophomore year, I like settled into chemistry. Ended up doing research in an organic chemistry lab for a couple years after that. And then um, I took a gap year to teach through the AmeriCorps in a program called City Year that was out here in Boston. And so I taught some elementary school fifth graders over Zoom during the pandemic, which was an adorable time. Uh, yeah, it was super great. So that's just generally kind of like my trajectory. It's a little bit more academic, and that's that I described. But I definitely had like more extracurriculars. There's like a lot more in how I explored my passion and came to medicine specifically during that path. But that was generally like the I think like core activities that I carried and like pursued throughout my process to med school here.
That's really cool that you had an interest in chemistry. Now, what extracurriculars did you partake in? That kind of leads me to my next point.
Yeah, so I really think when coming into my like love for medicine, it came more from my extracurriculars, honestly. Like classwork can only like really teach you, I guess, so much about a specific field. It does a great job of letting you explore many different academic interests. And so like my biggest recommendation going to college too, is not to necessarily silo yourself into like if I'm going to medicine or if I want to go into math for research, like not necessarily siloing yourself into like one field, but keeping your like options pretty open. Like take many classes, many different interests too. Like I went into it and I was thinking I was biophysics, so I took a few biophysics classes. I had taken some chem classes. I also had an interest in linguistics, and I ended up getting a minor in that too because I really loved the linguistics classes I took. So I think like a lot of those passions and the like whole mindset I had of just like I really just want to explore whatever I just personally like to do, and I also wanted to push that outside of the classroom. Helped me like so within extracurriculars pursue things. Initially, like I thought I liked biophysics research, so I was working on like I like making doing this thing called DNA origami, where like we like folded DNA into different shapes, and I ended up making it was kind of just like my own kind of like I guess like nerdy pride that like led to nothing really was just the Michigan M out of DNA. And that was super cool to me, but it never made it on a college app because it was just like it was research that I was like, this is pretty cool, but it's not. I like came to realize like this wasn't something I was passionate about, and so I ended up switching into organic chemistry research work, which I came to really love. Um, Additionally, within linguistics, I really loved language revitalization. And so one thing that I really got passionate about because of like a lot of different articles I was reading was how indigenous communities work to revitalize their own languages. And a significant project for me in undergrad and that I'm still working on right now is working on uh, creating a like mobile application to help digitize the language resources of a Native American group here in Michigan, or back in Michigan. And it was a like a really great experience. And like I approached this project from like my kind of, and this is where I say like in the classroom, I only have like one sort of, I feel like bubble or experience about like how I'm exploring my interests. Like I came into this project with a very linguistics focused like perspective of like I have some friends who can code. I have a general interest in like learning about language and thinking about language revitalization techniques, but it was all from a very academic understanding. But when I like started working with people in this community, a lot of it was building trust and rapport with them and understanding their cultural history, the history of evisceration that Indigenous people have faced in the US, and thinking about how within that context, they are facing a lot of different barriers and working to revitalize their language specifically. And it gave me a better idea of like understanding some of just like the systemic barriers that different communities have faced. And I think it was a great lesson in thinking about like, I think now something that I want to explore in med school is like Indigenous people's healthcare. And so it gave me a lot of interest just from a project like that. And so, yeah, that was a great experience. I think I feel like I'm talking a lot of extracurriculars, but the last one I really want to like kind of highlight too is I did a lot of, I think, things that I could go on and on about that I really love and really passionate about, but the absolute like one experience that helped me really center on the fact that I want to be in a line of work that centers around the care and support of others was joining the National Suicide Prevention Line and Crisis Line in my like junior year of college. I feel like personally, and I I think like one huge thing is like uh, we think about like the pre-med kind of grind and how stressful that can get. And I mean, so many different like fields in college are stressful. I think there's just like there's an aspect to like also just like the pre-med kind of like nonstop work, nonstop kind of grinding lifestyle where I think there's a certain neglect of one's own mental health. And thinking about like burnout, like after my sophomore year of college, like I had hit that. And I think it was just like I was pursuing a lot of different experiences that I was just like, I am really just trying to like push myself to do as much as I can. And I was not really checking in with like, am I genuinely loving what I'm doing, or am I pursuing some activities because I think like for some external reason this might be like a good thing to pursue. And it was just like it was completely draining. Like I had to drop a lot of different things I had and reevaluate like what I was interested in. And I think that kind of period of self-reflection and kind of centering with myself like pushed me to, and also a lot of personal reasons too, pushed me to want to join a crisis line and work to support other people. And kind of like I think it was a great process in like understanding how to reflect on my own mental health, to be kind of thinking about and supporting other people and letting them vent to you in terms of like when they're in their time of emotional distress required me to do a lot of my own self-reflection and understanding like about how I check in with myself and the people around me too. So it's a experience that like helped me within medicine, but I think in an even greater way, like helped me just be a better human being with myself and like the people around me. And like, that's what I'm like most grateful for. And I think the experiences that I really got the most out of, like span past like any sort of like professional reward that I was looking for, but like really like a personal reward that was just like about centered around something that again, I was just really passionate about and cared about. I think that had shown later through my interviews as a result.
Wow, that's an amazing process. So you were talking a little bit about burnout, and we know that the medical track is like one of the most rigorous to complete. So from the MCAT to like extracurriculars, how did you avoid burnout?
Yeah. So that's, I mean, yeah, that's a really good question because like I was saying, I definitely think that I initially didn't do such a great job of avoiding burnout. Even in like high school, I had just like nonstop stress in terms of just pushing myself. I think maybe like my high school was a little bit notorious for having a little bit of a pressure cooker type environment, where it did push me to have that mindset even in college. And it was a mindset that like I need to be like whatever the quote unquote best is in my field. I need to be like perfect in what I do. I need to like really like feel productive like all the time. And this idea of like productivity was centered around like I need to do as much academic projects, like extracurriculars as I can, and like balance as much as I can. And it was very hollowing in a sense of like, again, like I was not checking in with what am I passionate about? Like, what type of like person am I building myself up to be? How am I developing my own like personal characteristics, my own like mental health, my own like physical health and connection with the people around me? And I think that was just as important to understanding like again like what I like making me show up better for the activities I was taking on, but helping me then like just center myself. So end of my sophomore year, I put on way too much, felt overwhelmed, and I ended up having to just drop all my activities that I had because I just like couldn't bring myself to like attend a lot of those things. I was just like, wow, like I just don't have that motivation in me. I have like kind of lost that drive. And I think that was the thing with like burnout and like not checking in with your own mental health in times when you feel overwhelmed and you just suppress that down. It's like it's going to catch up with you at some point. And I think it definitely caught up with me there. And after that, I did a lot to check in with myself. Whenever I felt anxious or like I'm feeling overwhelmed or stressed, I would take a step back. I would work to ground myself and center myself on like, okay, let's reevaluate like what are we doing? Like, am I putting on too much on myself? If so, I would drop things. Like I would just center my activities around, and it helped because I would end up paring down what I was balancing to a few things I was really, really passionate about. And it reflected because like those were the things that I was like, when I show up to this work, I feel like I'm energized while I'm doing it. I'm like feel like I'm developing my own like worldview, my own like personal character, and I'm just genuinely loving the work I do. And it I think again really had shown in how I presented myself in my applications and my interviews because it was something that like before interviews I didn't need to think too much about my activities, my application because like that was just genuinely those were just things I love to do. And yeah, I think like really checking in with myself and again not letting myself get too overwhelmed, like taking it easy on myself, giving myself breaks, stepping back from my work when I needed to, and paring down activities to the few central ones that were important to me. I think all helped with like managing burnout. And it's something honestly that like still comes to my mind all the time. And like going to the medical field, you have to be aware that like physician burnout, physician like when we talk about like even just like suicide rates are some of the highest out of like any other profession. Like it really has to make you think about how do you check in with yourself and your own mental health, and are you pursuing activities that like are truly just like something you're passionate about.
That is some great advice. Mental health should always be prioritized. Now, kind of deviating from this point, how was your undergrad and med school application process?
Yeah, undergrad, I think after I like kind of like went into that whole phase of like doing things I really loved, like it was such a great time. Like I think a big part of it was finding a lot of like amazing people to surround myself with who pushed me to like be a better person for myself, but also for the work that I pursued and inspired me to like do some really amazing things. And I definitely think like the MCAT process was a little bit like definitely stressful. Like it was just like I had to definitely take out like a period of time where I just left campus, went back home, and just like was in my room studying, like basketball studying, like just like unwinding, studying. Like that was it. Like no other contact with any other human beings for like a good while until I was done with that exam. Um, but after that, I definitely think like when I had time to like take it easy with myself and like explore what I loved and like um, really like just take on like I love chemistry as a major too, and all of my linguistics classes I took, like I really loved my undergrad process. My gap year work was like a much needed I think break from just straight schooling, and so I definitely recommend like people think about how flexible your pre-med path can look. And even if it means like a lot of people like that I know in my class left the pre-med path, did something completely different, maybe had like different careers overall, and then came back into medicine, if that was ended up being like their career path too. Um, I think then like going into the med app process though, like that was another point of like, oh my gosh, like I definitely think that was the most stressful part of the like whole like kind of like pre-med to med journey. And I know, I mean, like there are more stressful parts like later on in med school and residency, but so far that med app process was like you have like your initial, like you think about like the Common App essay for applying out to college. You have that initial essay, it's like called the primary, and then you have school specific essays called secondaries. And those, they come in where like you have to submit them usually in like a 2 week to 1 month turnaround from when they send you these essays. Each school, so you'll apply to like, I would say like 20 to 30 schools for med school. They each send like 4 to 5, like two, yeah, 3 or 4 essays each. So when you have like this many schools, it starts getting to be a ridiculous amount of essays that you have to write in like a 2 week span. And it's like, I just didn't prepare that well. Like there's things you can do to like prepare better, but like it was just nonstop writing. And then the interview season came during the pandemic, and it was it was a lot. It was, I definitely think it's where like those ideas of self-care and like um after I was like taking breaks from that whole meta process, I was like working on like just completely isolating myself from work and just like kind of just like taking part in some hobbies, spending time with friends. Really, I think taking it easy for with myself. Like all those self-care tools that I built up really came in handy during the meta process. But yeah, it was a lot. It was a great lesson in self-reflection though, for sure.
That's amazing. It must be so difficult. It sounds very difficult, but I'm sure us HOSA students can get through it. So, how did you combat with the toxic nature of being a pre-med student? Like, there's a lot of comparison and competition for research opportunities. So, how did you combat with this?
Yeah. I That's like an excellent question too, because I mean, it's a kind of, I think, pressure from the how competitive the whole like pre-med med process is. Like going from like pre-med to med school is like such a bottleneck in how like it's structured in, at least in the US, and it's such that there it like pushes you or like pressures you to think about your peers and like the other people that like eventually when you're in like a healthcare workforce, you're supposed to have like a very collaborative mindset. Like it makes it, you think about it in such like a competitive pressure cooker type way. And I really wanted to push against like that because it was just something that like I think I am inherently like an easily anxious person, and so I just checked it with myself, and that was something coming into like undergrad. At the very least, I was like, um, I need to like have other circles of friends to like balance out the perspectives I'm getting, and that it's not just that the competitive kind of pre-med mindset that can be out there. Um, but again, like I don't think there's any like fault to people who have that, because it's just like that's what the process pushes you to do sometimes. Like it is, I think, just the fault of how like tough it is to just like come into that field, and the alternatives that people like end up going out from medicine if they choose not to do it are like equally amazing fields in healthcare that I think are like should be considered as like valid options for like exploring healthcare too. Like I think going into like medicine, medical school, getting an MD degree is not like the penultimate goal for like a healthcare process. Like there are multiple players on a healthcare team too, and there are also other ways you can support people. Um, but just like the whole nature of like, I think it brings in a lot of type A personalities sometimes in terms of just like nonstop work, and it's something that like I think it's very important to really reflect on, like if it's getting to be a lot for you, if it's like if you think it's like something that's at risk of your mental health, or something that like you physically don't think that it's like healthy for your lifestyle, or like you're like how you're progressing in undergrad, is something that you're not deriving genuine like joy from doing. I think you should like keep a very open mindset to like what careers you want to go into, what other passions you might have, which is why I also say like you should diversify like your interests and like what you're exploring. At this age, like you just have so much like freedom to like really like put your branches out, find some amazing mentors, talk to a lot of people, and learn about like the amazing career opportunities that are out there. to like explore your unique passions that you have.
Yeah, that's a great point. I really agree. I think keeping an open mind is a key to being successful in the medical field. Now, what is it like being at Harvard? I know it's a very prestigious school, as we all know.
Yeah, it's a great environment, and I for like so many reasons, but I definitely think it has some things that I definitely like to see improve. But I mean, it's like it's I mean, definitely I think coming from like I like Michigan as like I think is like a kid in high school, like it was something that definitely I would like kind of nerd out about going to a school like this. But coming here, I think there's a lot of stuff that like breaks down kind of that like I guess like iron curtain in a way of like not knowing like what that opportunity means for like coming to a place like this. And I think what really defines a lot of the community and opportunity here is, and I think it's something you'll hear a lot from people, is just like the people themselves, like the students you meet, the faculty, and the a lot of the like the research people that you can work with here, and the other like so I mean, there's like the teaching faculty. I mean, say like also like the general like HMS medical faculty that you're brought into. Um, the thing is, though, it's not unique to the school. Like there are so many fantastic opportunities to explore a lot of the same interests that I'm pursuing here at any other school around, because there are across the country like fantastic people doing like amazing work with their communities within specific research fields, within clinical care. And it's just like about finding like your fit too. I think this environment is a lot of just like so for me, I think the student body is like fantastically like they're just such a genuinely kind and like passionate people, and friendly, like so friendly. It's so easy to like feel comfortable and well connected with the people around you here. And it's always fun to like really like you can talk about anything, like any like I can have like conversations about like our hobbies, our interests, to like our like life academic passions, and like people will entertain all these conversations because they're genuinely interested themselves about like you as a person, but also like they know what it's like to like be passionate or interested about something, and I feel like that reflects out in how like they're also equally interested to see that passion in their peers around them. And so I think the like general HMS environment doesn't provide like any sort of difference in education or any of that stuff. I really think it's like the students they bring here that are already like just like people that I'm like you would like make such a significant difference in whatever you go into in like the future, like regardless of this school here. Like this will definitely like they can definitely connect with some amazing faculty, and I think a lot of like taking advantage of like opportunities here, and I think this goes again for any pretty much institution you go to, is like being very proactive, because like there are a ton of faculty here, but like also overwhelming. Like it's really hard to find people that are specifically interested in like what you might want to be exploring, but at the same time like there are tons of like leads to like go after. It's just dependent on you to also go after that. But again, I think the greatest thing is just like people are very passionate. They are inspiring and very supportive of each other, and I think that's like the greatest thing. And learning from like uh, I think again, it's just like even the faculty, like it's not necessarily again how they teach us differently. Even though I really love the curriculum here and I boost it, I will definitely like boost it all the time. But I think it's just like the fact that they're also like people that are they're like so passionate. They're usually like some of the top leaders in their research field. Like we will be learning about key biological mechanisms that have been literally discovered by the faculty teaching the course, and I'm like, what? Like this is so wild to me that like you're just casually talking about your research work behind you, but it is so cool. And I think that like sort of passion is something that's like helps drive me in a genuine like way and helps me better explore my own ideas and interests too. But yeah, I think it's like just a very supportive environment, an environment that like does like really support your like own like mental health and self-care in a lot of ways.
That's amazing. It's always so important to have a good environment around you and a great community to support you. So next, is there any other advice you would like to give high school students who want to pursue a career in healthcare? And is there anything you regret doing or not doing during high school?
Yeah. So again, I think the biggest advice is to keep your interests open. Healthcare is a great field. Like that is a great interest to explore. Explore that, but also like explore many other things. Like this is such a great time to also like build up like skills or interests, hobbies you like about yourself to just make yourself someone that's like interesting for you, that's like fulfilling for yourself. Like there's just so much time you have on your hands and like kind of like remove responsibility that like you can go after so much in that sense. So I think it's like you don't need to figure out things now. I think it's like very fine to like take things easy with yourself, like go like learn like go hiking, like go pick up like a passion, like a new hobby. Like I picked up embroidery during the pandemic and that was like a great point of like self-care from like and break, like a nice hobby too from just nonstop working. And I think there are also other things like people do where you can like pick up like hard skills that are like not necessarily tied to like a career interest but could like be helpful in the future if you're trying to like be productive in that sense. But I really think the biggest thing is like thinking about where you're at right now and just doing as much as you can just like build up a good foundation for yourself. I think it's great if you can like start to think about like building up those reflection skills, building on like centering yourself and understanding like who you are as a person. Because when you get to like writing college essays, your personal statement, secondary essays, when you get to med school stuff and have to write your med school essays and secondary essays, when you get to like residency apps, all of these steps require you to be someone who's like reflected on what like who you are, like what qualities you really have like built up and like about yourself and like think you strengthened about yourself. And I think a lot of that comes from like thinking again, like just being centered with yourself. And like if there are things that you want to build in yourself, like pursuing opportunities, pursuing experiences that you think would help with that. I think that's something that like at any step in your life would like help a lot with just like communicating like why certain activities you pursued are so meaningful to you. I think it's a great skill to have. So definitely like go easy on yourselves. I think for me, like mental health is a huge, I think, central theme for checking in with yourself and really taking things easy because there's a lot of mental health stress that can come from trying to silo yourself within healthcare, within the medical path. So yeah, I think there's a lot of great specialty or like fields to explore out there, but healthcare is great too if that's what you end up deciding to do.
Thank you so much. I think that was our last question. You gave us such thoughtful insights, and we really appreciate you having